thought, I'm going to die. I'm going to die in the next 6 months. And, maybe it'll be 12. We don't know. But I just panicked. But that lasted about 30 seconds. Because I got a hold of myself and I said, you know what? It's not your decision anyway. Right? The doctor can tell us what the prognosis is. We can make assumptions from the data. But at the end of the day, it's God's call. And so I call it our expiration date, right?
Yeah.
And I see it over and over again with people like you and, people like my mom who was diagnosed. I saw it in her data. So as part of the project that I was working on, I was collecting my parents' data, and I could see the changes in her data that led me to believe that there was something more serious going on. So I made a lot of appointments for her and took her in for a lot of tests until I finally had enough data to say, Mom, you have cancer. Again, I'm not a doctor, but this was my mom, so it was okay for me to say it to her. And she's like, well, what do we need to do? And so it took the system another 4 months post that discovery with that data to diagnose my mom. And she was diagnosed with 2 different cancers, 1 in each lung, 2 different treatment protocols, one of them extremely aggressive, a neuroendocrine type of cancer that's called small cell lung cancer, and it's a pretty deadly cancer. And so I did what I do, and in her case, I had a lot of control over exactly what we were doing. And I put her in a car, and she was progressively getting worse day by day. Put her in a car, drove her to Arizona, went to some clinics, some traditional medicine clinics and some alternative medicine clinics, and I was really just gathering data. I didn't think anybody was going to fix this for us. I knew at the end of the day she had a date. But what I could do was make it less scary for her and make her more comfortable and let her have some time with life from the perspective of cancer, the blessing of cancer. So essentially, we got back home. While we were in Arizona, we visited the Mayo Clinic, and the doctor in the Mayo Clinic said she had 3 months without treatment.
Wow.
9 months with treatment was what we could expect. If we were lucky, we'd get 12. That was 4 years ago.
Yes.
So my mom has achieved remission at least twice during this experience, and right now we're going through a really difficult time with metastasis to the brain post a brain surgery where a single tumor showed up. And there's some things I would do differently, but my parents got to make those decisions. I think we probably could have somewhat prevented or at least prolonged this additional metastases that she has. But again, this is a woman who at the time of her diagnosis was 76 pounds. She's 105 today. She's in her 70s, and she has had this 4-year journey that medicine didn't expect. And my parents are people of faith also, and there have been a lot of people praying for my mom too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's an interesting experience.
Yeah, it is. And the power of prayer, I don't know if we've touched on that enough, because the power of not only our own prayers for ourselves, but the power of friends and family praying for us is huge. I had a friend who was going through early stages of prostate cancer at the same time I was diagnosed. He didn't tell anyone, and he was fine. He had radiation early, and he's doing great. Me, on the other hand, I started stopping people on the street saying, "Pray for me, will you? I got terminal cancer. I need your prayers." I asked everybody to pray for me because I knew the power of prayer. I knew how much prayer had changed my life, and I'd seen it in other people's lives and so forth. And so not only do you need the Savior, not only do you need to be in close contact with our Creator, but you also need prayers of family and friends. Your mom's, one of the things why she's doing so good is because you're such a good prayer warrior. You're such a good care provider. And that's the other aspect to cancer. You may not be the patient, but if you're a care provider, it's hard on the care providers, I think, sometimes than it is on the patients, to be honest. And I've seen it both ways. I was a care provider for my mom, who died from dementia, but my sister, who had brain cancer, I was her primary care provider too. And it was hard to watch her. She was diagnosed first time 17 years before she died. She had a non-benign, or a benign, I'm sorry, cancer. I mean, a benign tumor in her brain, pretty big. But they removed that and said, we'll just do CT scans, PET scans every year, and we'll see how this goes. And she got up to every 5 years. And then it came back. When it came back, it was very entrenched into her brain. And
it was malignant then when it came back?
It was malignant then. And I remember my brother and I were there when she had her surgery. We loved her doctor. She got mad at him, but we loved her doctor. And Dr. Ghosh came out of surgery, and he kind of pulled us aside, and she had a bunch of friends there too. And he said, and I heard this, me, the deafest person on the planet, heard this. My brother didn't at first. And he said, I was only able to get 10% of it because it was so entrenched in her brain, and I didn't want to leave her without being able to talk and walk and, quality of what's left of her life instead of quantity. Right. And so, I immediately broke down, and my brother thought that he had heard he got all but 10%. And so he was like, you're happy, right? And I go, no. And so then I told him what was going on. Then, of course, he was, and we tried to pull ourselves together, go out and tell our friends, and it wasn't happening. And so, as my sister always was, it's like, okay, you have a brain tumor. Okay, let's cut me open and get it out of there. That was her attitude. So I learned a lot about having cancer and being sick from my sister, because she was, well, let's just get it done, move on. That's just who she was. And so basically her brain started shutting down her body from her toes up to her neck. And it was hard. And my daughter and I went to go see her, and we basically knew that's the last time we'd see her in this world. And she was gone. And so she helped me prepare for us. Cancer has been the main killer in my family for generations. Okay, we're diabetes and cancer family. We're Native American and English, and my grandfather died of esophageal cancer, and my grandmother on my mother's side died of breast cancer, and so forth. And so there's a lot of that. So I should have known anyway, right? Should be paying attention. So pay attention to your family history, because it does play into it. But it's just part of life.
Yeah, it is part of life, and it's part of living, right? And so living with, I know with William, we lived more in those 15 months. His prognosis was 6 to 9 months, by the way. We lived more in those 15 months than we lived in the entirety of the rest of our relationship, because it was purposeful.
Yes.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about the statistics and about the family history.
Please.
So statistically speaking, we're at a time right now where it's cancer, I don't want to say opportunity, but the incidence of cancer in people is 1 in 2, in particular in America, is 1 in 2 men will get cancer. That's 50%, right? And 1 in 3 women. So 33%. That's where we're at. That's where we're at right now. It's like not if you get cancer, it's when you get cancer. For half of the people, half of the men and a third of the women. I think that, and so the last time I actually studied that has been a few years, so it's very possible it's greater than that now. And I think that what we don't do as a society is think about hard stuff until hard stuff is knocking on our door.
Sure.
And so I will tell you, from a genetic perspective, genetics are a very, very tiny part of the cause of cancer. we hear about the BRCA genes, which is the breast cancer genes, right? And certain types of people are more prone to that. That is a genetically predisposed condition that then results in cancer, or a gene mutation, when you have a mutation on that BRCA gene. But there are a lot of genes that they test, and when we talk about genetics and cancer, people don't realize this, that there are a lot of genes that they test, but they're somatic mutations. So somatic mutations are mutations that happen through the course of your lifetime, potentially environmental exposure, or
Right.
epigenetics
Sure.
turning genes on and off, and like chronic stress, for example. But the genetic mutations, the actual ones that you're born with, are really a small percentage of overall cancer. So there's a lot that we can do. There's a lot we can be aware of. In your case, not going to the doctor, not getting things checked
Right.
out, not getting your routine checkup, that's a recipe for disaster. And I know you know that today. And for me, like, this is where I kick myself so hard sometimes, because I look back and look at all the time we spent together. Of course, I didn't know then what I know now.
Right.
But once I did know it, and all this time has passed, and, I don't know if we would have sat down, if I would have said, hey, Gary, you need to go in and get some things done, or if it would have even been appropriate for me to do that. Would it have changed anything? But at this point in my life, with the knowledge that I have, I can't unknow it.
Right.
So
Sure.
I know after William passed, I did not want to have anything to do with cancer. I was really angry, and my phone kept ringing, and people would say, hey, my brother just got diagnosed with cancer. I want to know what you think we should do. And I'm like, my husband died. Like, that was the greatest failure. Why are you calling me? I'm not the one to call. I don't have success in this. But people who had watched the journey closely saw that there were successes, right? We extended the prognosis. His quality of life until the last 2 weeks of his life was extremely high. And we traveled around the country, and we did all kinds of things. Like, we really put everything else on hold and focused on living. And he focused on his relationship with the Lord, which he had put on the back burner up to that point. And so there were a lot of successes. We didn't achieve the outcome. I wanted the cancer gone, right?
Sure.
But he said to me 2 weeks before he died, don't give up on this. Don't stop. And he's like, I think you're onto something. And so I was doing things like putting all his data in spreadsheets. And now, remember, this is 2013, so electronic health records were existing, but they weren't widely adopted the way that they are today. And then I was doing charts and graphs, and I was telling the doctors, hey, when are we changing the treatment? And they're like, we don't know yet. And I'm like, the data says it's time. And they're like, I actually had a doctor at MD Anderson say, where did you get this? And I'm like, I made it. And he's like, can I keep it? And I was like, sure. And he's like, okay, let's look at the treatment options, because I, who was a background in publishing and entrepreneurship, could see things that they weren't looking at. And I think that's the advantage of not being a doctor, is like looking at it from a different perspective. Albert Einstein said you can't solve problems with the same thinking that created them. And I've always thought, wow, that's so interesting, because I think when you have somebody on the outside who's looking in, especially a strategist or a logic-oriented person, you have somebody on the outside who's looking in, they see things differently. So it was the birth of what I call a ministry, a company. I had investors, a company called CureNav. We built some technology. We've retired that technology. In 2024, I was granted a patent for a patient-centered system, health management system, where exposomics and other things are put into place to be able to predict who's going to get cancer, as well as be able to predict what the best treatment outcome is. And this is a culmination of all these years of working with patients. The company currently is not profitable, though I've been working on this again since right after William passed, because I can't bring myself to charge anybody, which is like entrepreneurial death, right? But because it's a ministry for me.
Yeah.
So what I get to do, is I get to sit and talk to cancer patients in their most vulnerable time and strategize about next steps in a way that is, we get good results for sure. I've seen good results. Like my mom is a great example of that. But that's not even the best part of it. The best part of it is that deep connection, and especially for believers in Christ, and then those who don't know Christ that a lot of times start looking in those moments. I like to say, like, especially when I meet someone new, I like to say, "Oh, I'm so glad to meet you before we spend eternity together." And it's just such a cool thing to go,
Yeah.
like, we're gonna, we know,
Yeah.
we're gonna be there, right?
Right.
And not that doubt doesn't creep up into my mind sometimes, because sometimes I'm like, I'm not doing enough. I know it's not about what we're doing.
Right.
It's about the sacrifice that was made on the
Right.
cross.
Right.
But it's just so cool to think about there will be a death here. But it's just a death of what I call the car that we're driving in,
Yeah.
right? The car's
Yeah.
wearing out.
Yeah.
Cancer just brings that such into focus.
It does. Absolutely.
So anyway, there's so much more we could talk about. I know we have a limited amount of time, but is there anything else that you wanted to touch on?
No, I think this is where we started is good. What we would like to do moving forward, we'd like to add the element of doing this live so that people could call in, people can chat in, on the platform and ask questions or share their story, their testimony. I mean, I think if you beat cancer, that really is a testimony that you can share, and it gives hope to everybody else. I would say most of the people I've met in the infusion lab were all Christians. And I don't know how long they had been that or not, but it's certainly, you want to believe in God when you get sick. You want to believe that there's a creator who can heal you, who will take care of you, and make this journey not so difficult. So that's where we want to go with this.
Yeah, and do some interactions with patients and their real stories, and what's your cancer story, and what does your faith look like? And I think the important thing is that we can invite. It doesn't have to be people who believe in Christ. I think we invite anyone
Absolutely.
to tell their story.
Absolutely.
And the journey is growth together.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate your time, Crystal, as always.
Loved it.
I think this has been, I know I've enjoyed sharing what I know and hopefully, provide some hope for somebody, and would love to hear their story as well.
Great. And I just want to know, how many of these are you on now?
Now, I'm on this, that's the hormone blocker I'm on now. I'm on hydrocodone still for the pain. I'm not on morphine anymore, so that's good. I do have to take eye drops for glaucoma because one of the steroids I was on for a long time has caused an increase in pressure in my eyes, so I have to do that. This, of course, is my shot I take every day for diabetes. In the beginning, it was kind of like, who's going to kill me first, diabetes or cancer? I think right now the diabetes is in pretty good shape, so we're doing good with that. There's another one in here for hot flashes. There's another one for...
I might need some of that one.
Yeah. That's the other thing that's kind of funny is... and there's metformin, that's also for the diabetes. And then I'm on, like I said, I'm doing radiation infusions right now, where they're literally infusing me with these little radiated nanobots, I guess for a better term, that are attacking the cancer cells. And it's been a fun experience so far. I've done 2 of them. I literally can't be around people for about 48 hours. They come in with a little Geiger counter and check, make sure I'm not leaking before I walk out.
Wow. And
so it's pretty cool. I was kind of hoping I'd be able to glow in the dark, and the doctor said, well, let me know if that works out for you. And so far I'm not glowing in the dark, so anyway. But that's the latest, greatest treatment. And, there's been good things coming from that. A longer life for guys like me that really, don't have a lot of, options. And my first reason to be here was to walk my daughter down the aisle, which I did on 5/25/25. I would have been happy if I had to roll her down the aisle, but I was able to walk her down the aisle, able to dance with her, and so that was a blessing and an answer to a big prayer I had. I don't want to put the burden of making my children say they got to have a baby right now so I can say I'm sticking around for my grandchildren, because that should be on their timetable, not mine. So now my goal is to make it to live longer than anyone on record who's have what I have. And I think that was a little over 5 years. So I'm planning on knocking out another couple of years and then maybe come up with another goal. One of the things I loved that you said in this podcast was that you can learn to live with cancer. And I like that. I am living with cancer, and is that the spider on my face now?
I know.
I am living with cancer, and it's not so bad.
Yeah.
It's not so bad when you got plenty of people loving on you and praying for you, and you got a Savior that answers your prayers every day, and got a place that you're going that makes this place seem like nothing. It's so amazing. So, yeah.
I just want to say this one last thing. It's interesting because whenever I work with cancer patients, one of the things I try to remind them, so a lot of times the diagnosis part is really scary, and I say, well, you know what? You had it yesterday.
Yeah.
And you had it the day before, and you probably had it for several months, if not for years, before this. The only thing that's changed is your awareness.
Yeah.
And the fact that you have to now get up and start doing something.
Yeah.
But the reality is that awareness is so good, because it's not just awareness of treating your body to manage the cancer or get rid of it, depending on what stage you're in, but it's also the awareness of that terminality, so to speak, and that expiration date. And so, I have said ever since William passed, cancer was a huge blessing in my life. And people are like, oh, yeah, that's great. You don't have to deal with your husband anymore. And
that's not the blessing part.
Right. No, it's not. And having not been a person who was diagnosed at the time, it was like I didn't really have the right to say that cancer was a blessing. I could only say that it was a blessing that for the development of our relationship and his spirituality. But you, as a cancer patient, have every right to say it's a blessing. And I think that's one of the most powerful things of this entire podcast today is like, it is. And we've touched on why.
Yeah.
But it really is because you now get to live with the freedom of the stuff that didn't matter anymore, or the stuff that didn't matter, but you made it matter before.
Mm-hmm.
You start to let it go.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
That's one of the things. I mean, I've always loved you, and you've always been a great partner to me, and we've done so much good work together, but the thing that you've always said to me is, I want to do God's work. And then you'd veer off and go work on your projects that were, money makers, right? Like anybody would, because money is necessary in this world. But since you have been diagnosed, you've been more diligent about making sure that the kingdom work that you've wanted to do all your life, that your heart has been in the right place for, that you got to do sometimes, is getting priority. And I just think that's so beautiful. I just think that is a blessing.
It is a huge blessing. And I've been blessed by you as my spiritual partner through it all. And, we knew we'd get there someday, right? Yeah. Hopefully one day when we get home, he'll say, well done, my children.
Yeah, for sure. We'll be cutting up in heaven too. Getting you in front of the camera.
Yeah.
Instead of behind the camera is like all this time even pushing me front and center, and I'm like, can I scoot over here to the side? And you finally agreed. I think that's just super cool.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Because it doesn't matter. That's right. It doesn't matter. Yeah. As I powder my under eye bags, and it just doesn't matter.
Yeah. It doesn't. I tell people, God has a book, and in the book, He's got Gary, and then beside there's an expiration date, and there's nothing I can do about it. It was there from the beginning, and this is just the vehicle where I'm getting there. And the fact that I've been through a lot the last couple of years, and I feel like I look 10 years older now. I used to look 10 years younger, but it doesn't matter. It's about the message.
Yeah.
It's
We
all
all have
about
a
the
message.
message. It's all about the message. So we're going to end it again.
Yeah, but not really, because we're going to talk once we turn the cameras off.
Yeah, they probably won't turn the cameras off in the control room, and we'll keep talking. But we appreciate you being here, and we'll be praying for you if we know you have cancer, because that's the power. And we hope you'll share your story with us down the road.
God bless you.